Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this video, we will present our precedent and case studies on coral reefs conservation and rehabilitation. But first, let us witness the beautiful coral in the ocean. So now, let's have a look at the precedent studies. The first precedent study is Palau International Coral Reef Center located in Coral Island, Republic of Palau. It was built in September 2000 by Mia Architect. Second is the Coral Reef Research and Awareness Center, Kalpitia, Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka by Rivika Paris. And last, the Florida Aquarium, which was built on 31st March in 1995 in Tampa, Florida, United States by HOK Architects. Move on to the analysis, which covers on the materials, functions, facilities, circulation, and the site context. For the materials, the first study used concrete posts and beams, metal cladding for the roof cladding, and brick wall as the building materials. The second study was constructed with wall glass for the coral reef benefits, brick walls, and steel structure. And for the last case study, it used panel glass roof, concrete mixes for the tanks, and also steel structure. Next, the functions. For all three buildings, they were built for education and, of course, conservation purposes. For the facilities, we divided into four groups, which are Research Building, Visitor Center, Administration Building, and Services Center. The Research Building contains the laboratories, sample and equipment storage, workshops, and classroom, while the Visitor Center is the exhibition area where there are galleries, aquariums, library, and auditoriums for display and learning sessions. On the other hand, the Administration Building is where the offices and conference rooms are located. And lastly, the Services Center that offers cafeterias, gift shops, and boat services. Next, the circulations in the first and second studies are quite similar, where there are three main spaces were connected to each other and administration building became the center. However, the third study was a bit different, where the administration area and the services area were on the first level, while the research area and visitor center area were on the second level. The site context of all three studies was similar, which there are near to the seashore and surrounded with tropical trees. To conclude the precedent studies, we synthesize that in terms of the materials, we choose to have glass, metal, and brick for our building. The glass is for the coral reefs to grow and to allow the natural lighting into the interior spaces. We also choose metal because it is low maintenance, lightweight material, and it is strong structure. And last, for the brick, because it is economical, weatherproof, and also low maintenance. As for the facilities, we synthesize to have three main areas, which are research area that contains laboratories, workshops, and storage, visitor center area where there are aquariums, galleries, and library, and administration area which consists of offices and discussion rooms. We also need supplementary area for services where there are souvenir shop, yacht, and boat services for fundraising and research survey purposes. Moving on to the circulation. Three main spaces, which are administration, visitor center, and research areas, should be connected to each other, where the administration area is at the center, as it is the managing and operating area. Lastly, for the site context, we synthesize to have a parking area, an outdoor tank or tide pool, yard, jetty, and pathways to ease users' activities. Moving on to the case study 1, it is about Acropora. What is Acropora? Acropora is the genus in the family of Acroporidae and the order Scleractinia. Acropora corals are formed of 1,000 individual polyps. They are predators and usually eat plankton as food by extending their tentacles during the night. Next, the symbiotic relationship. Acropora lives together with algae that is also known as zooxanthellae within their tissue. The algae will help Acropora to produce food, energy, and pigments. In exchange, Acropora produce waste as food for the algae and shelter for algae to live. But what Acropora needs for them to live? Generally, Acropora live in the ocean because they need salt water to survive, and they will only grow in shallow water so that they can reach sunlight for algae to do photosynthesis. From this, algae will provide energy for corals. corals are very sensitive toward changes in water temperature and easily stressed. Usually, they will grow in the temperature range 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. If the water temperature increases, the coral will bleach and die. Acropora can reproduce sexually through gametes and also through the fragmentation process. So, for the Acropora species, we chose Acropora locani, Acropora loisetiae, and Acropora kosurini because these are the threatened Acropora species found in Malaysia. For the synthesis case study 1, we would like to create a large tank or space for planting corals to avoid competition between them. Then, we want to provide enough lighting, stable temperature with right composition of water and also water movement to prevent coral bleaching. And lastly, we want to provide nursery space for the damaged corals. Now, let's move on to the second case study. For the second case study, it is about the lighting for coral reef aquariums and tanks. Now, what is the proper lighting that we as a reef keeper are going to use for our reef aquarium? It is important to know the proper lighting for reef aquariums because it is one of the most debated topics. Actually, it depends on the type of the corals needed for their own nutritional needs and photosynthesis process. But don't worry, in this video, we will cover some of the basics of the light itself and the various lighting technologies that people use to light their reef aquarium. Moving on to the light spectrum. To allow the photosynthesis process to happen with appropriate lighting, we must be able to identify the optimal spectrum for the lighting itself. Here is just basic information about the optimal light spectrum for coral growth, which must be between 360 to 480 nanometers. So basically, the blue and violet light spectrum will deliver the best condition for coral life. But then, why is the lighting so important for reef aquariums? It is because of the photosynthesis process, the coral growth, coral colors, and their hormone production. But the most important reason is photosynthesis process because through this process, it gains 80 to 85% of their energy. And then, for the next slide, it is about the basic lighting that has been used for the coral aquarium since this conservation started. Whether it is LED lighting, metal halide, or even natural sunlight, it all depends on what aspects of lighting that are suitable for the specific coral. So here, there's a quick summary that in this era, LED lighting is the best all-around light for most reef aquariums. And so, for the synthesis of this case study too, it should be identified first the specific type of lighting, light spectrum, and light intensity that provide the optimal conditions for corals to flourish. Then, arrange it and manage the duration of the daily photo period for the reef aquarium. After that, set up the optimal spectrum for the coral growth and color expression between 360 to 480 nanometers. And lastly, design an accurate composition for all the reef aquariums and tanks to get appropriate lighting conservation for the corals. Now, let's proceed to the last case study, which is about the coral restoration. Coral gardening is the method that involves by taking small coral fragments and growing them through asexual reproduction until they are matured enough to be transferred back to the reef. Usually, it can be done in the laboratory, which is a land-based nursery, or in the ocean, which is an ocean-based nursery. This method starts from collecting bleached coral in the sea, then continues with the fermentation process. Then put them in the salt water with the right temperature, enough light, and they will grow healthily and ready for harvesting back into the sea. Moving on to the second method, which is mineral accretion technology. This technology is the method that purposely built artificial structure electrified with low voltage electrical current to induce mineral accretion through electrolysis. It only can be done in the ocean or in large spaces. This method starts by building the structure and putting the coral on the structure, then the electrolysis process will be involved on it. As a result, corals will grow bigger with new habitat for fishes and other marine organisms. So now let's continue to the synthesis for the last case study. We would like to choose the coral gardening method because it used less tools and materials, thus less budget needed. It also required low maintenance compared to mineral accretion technology. And also, from this method, we can move the corals to many reefs and produce hundreds of corals on each reef, so many new habitats will be constructed. Unlike the mineral accretion technology that only enliven on one artificial structure. So that's all from us. Hopefully you enjoyed our video. Stay safe everyone, stay happy, stay smile, and Assalamualaikum.